Roll Tide, and welcome to Crimson Tide Rewind, live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills, presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, who reminds Alabama, don't wait, vaccinate. Welcome, everybody. This is Roger Hoover alongside former Crimson Tide linebacker Cory Reamer. And Cory, this is usually the point of the show where I say, okay, Alabama's now 3-0, 4-0. Fortunately, Crimson Tide now 4-1.
Yeah, the enthusiasm's a little bit less today. Everybody's still licking their wounds from this Saturday. It was that was a tough one. I mean, there's just no other way to cut it. It's a game that you always expect to go in. You know, maybe that was the problem. You expect to go in and win that ball game, and give credit to Vanderbilt. You know, we saw kind of the tail end of that Georgia game. You know, there's some exposures that Vanderbilt was able to take advantage of, and you just hadn't seen, it's been 40 years, you know, since we've lost to Vanderbilt, and they found a way to, they played hard. They came in, they were prepared, they played extremely well, they were well coached, and found ways to really give us a lot of fits, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But, yeah, this is the first loss, but, you know, this is a new era of college football as well. There's still plenty of opportunity for us to find a way into the playoff at the end of the year, but these are that you've definitely diminished your room for error for the rest of this season. So a lot of good tape to go back and watch, and a lot of things to get fixed. And sometimes you just need, you know, there's no growth without some pains. And we had a lot of pain on Saturday, and I'm sure that the film session on Sunday and practice today was not a fun one for some of these players. And there's definitely going to be some, hopefully, a sense of urgency from this team to make sure that they're prepared for the rest of this season, because the schedule definitely doesn't get any easier from here on out. There's still a lot of teams that are going to be pretty tough matchups, including this one on Saturday against South Carolina.
So it's Alabama against South Carolina coming up at 11 a.m. on Saturday. Our radio coverage will start at 8 o'clock. But here with you for the next hour from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. And we invite your phone calls. Give us a call at 877-202-BAMA. Again, that's 877-202-BAMA. As we're going to be with you for the next hour. We want to hear your thoughts on Alabama against Vanderbilt and what's coming up between the Crimson Tide and the Gamecocks coming up on Saturday. But back to the Vanderbilt game for a moment. At what point were you the most worried that this game maybe couldn't turn back Alabama's way?
I mean, we never had the lead. I mean, it was just it came out of the gate, got down 13-0 pretty quickly. Had that one turnover from Jalen Milroe with a tip ball. That was not a play that we made a mistake on, or Jalen Milroe made a mistake on, a receiver. It was just a good play by the DB. Gets his hand in there, pops that ball up, and the defender catches it in stride and puts points on the board pretty quickly. But you know, I think coming out of that second half, you score to get it pretty close early on, and then Vanderbilt just kept answering. You know, they just kept answering and putting points on the board. We weren't getting stops on third down, and I think that's probably the moment where I realized that even if our offense is doing their best to keep us in the ball game, we have no answer for this offense on the Vanderbilt side. And, you know, you always think obviously it was a trap game. We saw all the pictures of the rat traps and mouse traps that were around the facility last week. But you hear the coaching staff talking about they had a great week of practice. And so it's hard to explain other than we just did not execute against an offense that you're not going to see a lot in college football very much. I mean, there's still variations of what we saw from Saturday in a lot of the offenses that we see, but they really rely on that zone read, that option look, and it's a tough offense to prepare for, especially this late in the season. You've had a tough game last week against Georgia, whose offense looks completely different, but we've seen some inefficiencies on the defensive side of the ball throughout this season. I just didn't expect Vandy to be the one that really could point them out and take advantage of them to win that ball game. So there's definitely got to go back to the drawing board. You got to get some of these players, you know, Kane Womack's got his work cut out for him of going back and figuring out what the problem was. And we'll talk about it, I'm sure, throughout this show of really where it broke down. But there's definitely some work to be done.
Again, tonight we invite your phone calls, 877-202-BAMA, the number to call. That's 877-202-2262 to talk about the Crimson Tide and Vanderbilt from this past week and look ahead to what's coming up on Saturday between Alabama and South Carolina. We're just getting started for the next hour of Crimson Tide Rewind. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Hour from Learfield.
Milroe gets the handoff, hands it to him. Breaks a tackle, 5-4, 3-2-1. Touchdown, Alabama. 50-yard touchdown run for Jam Miller. That is his second touchdown rushing of the year, and the Crimson Tide is able to get on the board. It is now 13-6.
2 touchdowns for Jam Miller this past Saturday against Vanderbilt. 2 touchdowns on 5 carries for Jam. He had 45 yards in the ball game. Chris Stewart on the call there as we continue looking back at Alabama against Vanderbilt. Want to remind you to keep up with everything Alabama with the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app presented by Cadence Bank. It's available at the App Store and Google Play. Download the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app now for free. Again, tonight we are taking your calls on Alabama football. If you'd like to join us, give us a call at 877-202-BAMA. And our first call of the night comes from here in Birmingham, where Mike joins us now. Roll Tide, Mike.
Roll Tide anyhow, gentlemen. Roll Tide anyhow. This day we got tricked. Talking about this time of year, Halloween, trick or treat. We got tricked big time Saturday, man. I mean, they threw the clock up 42 minutes, and then 12, 18, 30 out converted. They put 40 points against our defense. It was heartbreaking, man. And we never did get the ball back late in the game. It's nobody's pointing fingers. Anybody on Alabama team is a team loss. It's a team loss, and Vanderbilt won. Took them 4 years to beat Alabama, so hats out to them. But now, Chris, if Vanderbilt keep on doing what they're doing and win the rest of their games, I don't know, man. Vanderbilt is supposed to by doing what he did against Vanderbilt. Can he do it against the rest of the teams in the conference? I don't know. I know Vanderbilt is going to bounce back. I know it, my heart and my soul. My heart, my mind, and soul. This team is going to bounce back on Saturday. They're going to take South Carolina down on Saturday. Ole Miss took them down in Columbus, South Carolina. We'll take them down in T-Town. Vanderbilt's going to bounce back. We dropped down from 1 to 7. Well, look at Tennessee. Lost to Arkansas. They dropped from 4 to 8. So everybody's getting a loss. So we're going to maintain that one loss. We're going to keep it going. Take it all the way to the end of the season. We'll play for the SEC. We're going to playoffs. We won a 12 team, won 12 best teams in the country. We're going to playoffs. I'm guaranteed for the rest of the season. Bell's going to take it all the way to the national playoffs, guys.
I appreciate it, Mike. I think there's a couple points that he made that were absolutely, the good ones. We'll start with the fact that Vanderbilt's offense had the ball for 42 minutes. I mean, that is a recipe for losing right there. Alabama's offense has the ball for 18 minutes. They played 46 snaps on offense. They put up 35 points. The offense was doing everything they could to, obviously we had a couple turnovers that cost us, 2 turnovers that ended up turning into points on both of those for Vanderbilt's offense. But the fact that you can't get off the field when you're facing this Vanderbilt offense that's just inexcusable. You got to find a way to get stops, especially towards the end of the game when you know what they're going to do. They've got the ball. We're down by 5. We've got to find a way to get the ball back, and not committing to the run. Obviously, we got beat on a 4th and 1 with the miracle throw over the top of the defense earlier in the game, but this is the end of the ball game. Vanderbilt's trying to finish this thing off. They're running it. You got to get a stop, and on first down, they gash us for 11 yards. And that was probably the most disappointing thing that we were watching is even in obvious running down situations, the gap integrity of this defense just was not up to par at all. From what you're used to seeing from Alabama's style defenses, it was just a numbers game, and they were able to find, mismatches and had more hats on, on the side they were trying to run to than we could. We had defenders, and they were taking advantage of it. But 42 minutes and 12 of 18 on third down that Vanderbilt was, that's just hard to stomach from us fans that have been watching these, just unbelievable defenses that we've had over the past few years. That's the side of the ball that you can always rely on. Let's get off the field. Let's create some turnovers and find a way to get back in this ball game, give this offense a chance to go out there and win. That was the hard part for us. It's just something that's got to be fixed. And we've seen some inefficiencies throughout this season so far, and some offenses, starting with the South Florida game, we had some receivers that were running deep that were open, and the quarterback couldn't get them to them. And then we saw what Georgia did in the second half of last week's game, and Vanderbilt was able to find ways to have a lot of success, especially in the run game. I mean, that's what we're all used to is these defenses go out there and let's shut the run down and make these quarterbacks beat us with their arm. You got a guy like Diego Pavia, you hope that he's having to throw the ball at some point to beat us. You got to commit to shutting down that run, and we just didn't do a very good job of it on Saturday.
speaking as a former defensive player as well, and I know when you played there wasn't as much tempo offense, things like that. Teams huddled more, obviously had more balance as well running the football, but I mean, just how draining was it for our defense to be on the field as much as they were, especially when you get late in the ball game?
Yeah, I mean, it's just tough. This is what our MO of a team always was, is let's wear these opponents down in running the football, and then you could just, at the end of the ball game, you have your way with them, and it's hard to watch Vanderbilt doing it with us. But I mean, this was some basic stuff. Obviously, we don't see this style of an offense very often. There's variations of what they do that we're going to see every single week. Zone read is nothing new, not a new concept for anybody, even though offenses have changed and go in a lot more spread or you don't see many option teams. But the lack of discipline that was on the defensive side of the ball, when you're playing an option, you got to get a hat on a hat. And you've got to be able to play gap integrity. You got to know where your leverage is. You got to understand where your help is. And it just seemed like this defense was kind of chasing their tail a little bit. And they were able to create gaps, and we didn't have enough guys to fill them to shut down the run. So Vanderbilt wasn't going to stop it. I mean, that's just the way it goes. So I agree with Mike. I think we got a pretty good chance of still playing well, but you hope that this style of game is not what we're going to be seeing for the rest of the season, where we've got to score 45 to 50 points to be able to even win the ball game because our defense can't stop anybody. That's not what we're about. We've got plenty of good players out there, but we've got to be more disciplined, especially in our running game on the defensive side of the ball than we were on Saturday.
Tough loss for the Crimson Tide. Again, we're going to take your phone calls. 877-202 is the number to dial. 877-202 BAMA, the number to dial for tonight's Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Handoff goes to Miller. He is going to walk into the end zone right side. Touchdown, Alabama.
Our next question brought to you by J&J Apparel. J&J Apparel, your trusted source for Bama gear. New Alabama hats, t-shirts, and polos arriving daily. Visit online at jnjapparel.net or shop their retail store at 1926 University Boulevard in downtown Tuscaloosa. RTR with J&J. We go back to the phones where Parker joins us now from Pace, Florida. Roll Tide, Parker.
Roll Tide, Roger. How are y'all tonight?
Hanging in there. Better than I was on Saturday, I'll say that. I'm getting there.
I mean, this kind of reminds me of Nick Saban's first year, 2007, that ULM game. I was in Tuscaloosa for that game. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the loss that you're not expecting, absolutely. I think that that was a game that, Coach Saban had come in and we're trying to revamp the roster, and you get a ULM team that we're still trying to figure out how to be prepared every single week. You're overlooking an opponent. I don't think that we overlooked Vanderbilt, because this is not a team that was flying under the radar. They're not the Vanderbilt of old. We saw they were able to go out there and beat Virginia Tech early, and they're giving some teams some fits this year. I think they lost to Georgia State, and that's – you get a team that's as well coached as – Clark Lee is a good coach. Yeah. You can't take that away from him. He's a Vandy alum. He's got a lot of pride in this Vanderbilt football team. They've done a good job of going out there and finding some players. They get beat. They've got a lot of what we're talking about right now for Alabama. Now, they get beat. You have a lot of good tape to go back and watch and fix a lot of things from. And then they have the week off, and they executed their game plan really well. Let's drain this clock, keep Alabama's offense off the field as long as we possibly can. Then it's up to the defense to find a way to shut them down to get the ball back for us. But yeah, I mean, in terms of expectations for this team, you always should, for the last 40 years, we've beat Vanderbilt. And so losing to Louisiana Monroe in 2007 was definitely a low point in that first season. But there's still a lot of hope for this team. There's still, that team had multiple losses and we're fixing a lot of things, trying to get better. This is one of those, this season, this part of the season, you still have a lot to play for. This is a good quality football team. We just caught Vanderbilt on a really good day, and they executed a lot better than we did.
Tough night in Nashville. We'll continue taking your calls. Give us a call at 877-202-BAMA. Again, the number 877-202-BAMA. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Taylor approaches the football, an under-in kick that'll be fielded at the 3 and returned by Henderson. 15, 20, 25, still on his feet, 30, 35, still on his feet down the near sideline, out of bounds, near midfield, a great return. Emmanuel Henderson Jr. could not get out to the 20 on 2 previous returns, but this one covers 44 yards, and Bama is in business early.
You can also be a part of tonight's Crimson Tide Rewind show by submitting your question to us on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN. Brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports. But right now, the phone's still buzzing on this Monday night. We will go to Mobile next, where Laverne joins us now. Roll Tide, Laverne.
Hello. I'm a big Bama fan, but we need some discipline on this team. The last 6 quarters, the defense has just not even shown up. And the offense is not focused. They're not paying attention. I was at both games, Georgia and Vandy. I don't know what's going on or what's different or what's changed. I don't know if it's ice cream trucks at the end of practice or whatever it may be. But we need to focus on football and not on music during practice and all this other stuff. That's what I think. As a parent, you need to parent and not be a pal.
It's hard to disagree. I mean, but hey, welcome to the new age of college football. There's a mix. I think that these coaches have a hard time, and I think you're seeing a lot of coaches that are getting out of the game because of what they have to do to continuously recruit their own rosters. And that's what you do a lot of these extras for. These kids are, it's the NIL world, and there's a lot more that you had to do than you used to in the past. But I think from a discipline standpoint, when I referred to it earlier, we were really talking about like your eye discipline, your gap discipline of understanding what you've got to do, and that it correlates for sure, because you're not disciplined in some areas, you're not going to be disciplined on what your job is. The thing about Coach Saban is you've got to be focused on doing your job. Whenever we played teams like this, it was crucial for having the right eye discipline, knowing how to take on blocks. If you were taking it with your inside shoulder or your outside shoulder, there was a reason for those things. And players that he had that were really good athletes never saw the field because they weren't taking blocks on the right way. They couldn't find it, because if you take it on, you take a pulling guard, for example, and this game is a perfect example for it. If you're taking a pulling guard on and you're the outside linebacker and you take it on with your outside shoulder, well, that means that you're creating a gap for the running back to hit on the inside, and that's where they're trying to go. And your linebackers that are behind you, it starts up front, and everybody behind you is relying on you to take the block on the right way, because then the ball gets kicked out to the outside. Then your backside backers got to scrape over the top to fill that gap that's been created. And if the front line messes it up and doesn't handle it the right way, then it creates chaos behind you. And everybody can be doing the right things, but if one guy on that defense doesn't handle it the right way, then the gaps open up and you're going to get slashed for 5 to 10 yards a pop. That's the type of discipline that I was talking about earlier in the show, but I think there is a correlation of doing things right off the field and on the field. You got to focus on the details. There's a reason why this is basic fundamental football. If you're playing an option team, everything kind of has to go right. You've got a guy that's responsible for the running back. You've got a guy that's responsible for the quarterback. And then you've got a guy that's responsible for either the pitch man or the tight end that's out in the flat. Well, we had a lot of times on Saturday where both backers were chasing the quarterback. Well, you cannot have that happen on offenses like this, because then it opens up. They're reading us just like we're trying to read them. And if they see 2 guys chasing the quarterback, well, he's just going to hand it off. And then you've got nobody to account for the running back, and he's going to run untouched and have big plays. And it happened play in and play out on Saturday. And you've got to have a lot of repetition, but you've got to be focused and understand what it is. A lot of people just want to say, why don't you just go out there and make a play? Why don't you just go out there and tackle the guy with the football? Well, there's a reason why things happen in certain orders. It's like you've got to have, if the defensive end crashes, then the quarterback hands it off or he keeps it. And then if your linebacker doesn't scrape over the top to take care of the quarterback, then he's going to take off when they run the ball, but if he does, then he's going to pitch it. Well, then you got to have a safety that's coming down and filling the alley and making the tackle. You've got to have a hat on a hat for every formation that you're seeing when you're facing these types of offenses. And Saturday, we just did not have the numbers to be able to get stops consistently, and they were taking advantage of it. They created a lot of opportunities where they had more guys to block than we had guys to tackle, and that's why you saw them have the success that they did.
Tough night in Nashville this past week, but if you're coming to Tuscaloosa for this game against South Carolina, make sure you stop by Vector Security Champions Lane. Best pregame fan fest in the country. Our live radio broadcast will start things on stage at 8 a.m., followed by live music, pregame coverage on the largest outdoor LED screens in Tuscaloosa, and food trucks, and of course, ice-cold beverages in Legends Lounge, where there's never a cover charge. Visit championslane.com each week for more details. Tonight we're coming to you live from Baumhower's Victory Grille, where it's always ready for football fun and great food, and your big game headquarters all season long. More than 60 televisions dialed into your favorite team's games. You'll never miss a play of the action. If you're going to the big game, make sure you visit your local Baumhowers before or after for legendary fun, legendary food, and legendary celebrations. We'll be back with more in a moment. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Josh Cuevas, the tight end. Now here's Bernard going to the left side. Milroe, an empty backfield. Gets the snap. Quarterback sweep. Left side. Has blocking. And the touchdown. Alabama. Great job on the play. It was Brailsford and Booker who pulled on the quarterback sweep. And Alabama looks like Alabama pulling to within 3.
Hey, if you'd like to join us on the show, you can also submit your questions to us on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN, brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports. And before we go back to the phones, I heard the name Josh Cuevas. I love the fact that Josh Cuevas, C.J. Dupree really got involved in the offense. Both had 2 catches, combining for 88 yards. I love seeing the tight ends get involved in this offense.
Yeah, when you get tight ends, that means that we're throwing the ball over the middle of the field. And, early on in the season, a lot of last year, we saw Jalen Milroe. The knock on him was always that all he has was the deep ball. And taking big shots, making big plays, which he's still been able to do this year. But what was really a good takeaway from Saturday was I was really impressed with Jalen Milroe and his ability to really read some defenses and find some open receivers in that middle of the field and kind of be selective of where he throws it and not, just taking those deep shots. He was working the middle of the field very well. That's been an improvement from last year, big time, and throughout this season. We saw it last week against Georgia, kind of putting some methodical drives together, finding and getting those tight ends involved is crucial, especially as big of a mismatch as it is to have guys that are that athletic and they're lined up again, being guarded by outside backers and safeties. So good to get them involved in the game.
Certainly was good to see that, as we will go right back to the phones, and this time we'll go to Moundville, where Hal joins us now. Roll Tide, Hal.
Hey, Cory.
Hey, Hal.
Hey. I was wondering if every college team seems to have at least one really fast edge rusher, or in some cases 2, a lot of cases 2. And I was wondering if colleges could go to smaller, faster offensive tackles to block them.
I think you can. I think that if you look down the street at a team across the state, I think that's probably their problem right now, is that they're trying to find guys, especially at the tackle position, that don't have the fastest footwork. I mean, you see tackle. There's a reason why tackle is one of the highest paid positions in the NFL. It's because these defensive line are just getting so much better. They're getting so much faster. And trying to find these guys that are big enough to be able to be efficient in the running game, as well as quick enough to be able to block some of these edge rushers. I don't know if there's ever going to be a point in time where it comes back around where the tackles are, it's hard. You're not seeing a lot of sacks. It's going to be pretty tough. You're finding these guys that are not just big on the edge, but have a lot of speed and a lot of quickness and a lot of agility. It requires quarterbacks to have that internal clock where they've really got to be able to get the ball out quickly, because you sit back there for really more than 3.5 seconds. That's way too long. And we had a couple plays on Saturday I think we just missed a block that caused the strip sack fumble. That was just the one where we didn't get some hands on the guy and slow him down at all. I mean, he was back there in less than 2.5 seconds. That's pretty fast. So the goal is to give your quarterback at least 3 seconds to be able to read the defense. And you think about that. That's quick. You got to be moving pretty quickly and be prepared to get that ball out of your hands. Trying to find those guys. There's a lot of people that were former tight ends that moved to those tackle positions because they've got really good hands, really good feet, and we're able to add a little bit of size. But the inefficiencies when you do that is if you are trying to establish the run, you get the smaller guys that are out there on the edge kind of can get it taken advantage of because even these faster guys are, you get a bull rush from some of these guys that are also very strong. They're going to be able to push those smaller guys right back into the lap of those quarterbacks. You've got to have a guy that can anchor his feet and keep a clean pocket for these quarterbacks. So it's a balancing act of trying to find who that guy is that's going to be efficient at that tackle position.
Thank you so much for the call, Hal. We will continue with more coming up in a moment as you listen to Crimson Tide Rewind. It is presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, who reminds Alabama, don't wait, vaccinate. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Milroe in the pistol. 2 wideouts each side. Gets the snap. Looking downfield. Down the boundary. Has Williams. It is caught. Breaks the tackle. He will score. Ryan Williams does it again. 58 yards on a perfect strike from Jalen Milroe.
This season, make sure you stay cool when you purchase a limited edition Alabama Yeti. These vintage Yeti cups are only available at Champions Lane and at program stands all around Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Elevate your game day with Yeti. We will go back to the phones. We'll go to Hartselle next, where Joe joins us now. Roll Tide, Joe.
Roll Tide, guys. Hey, it's pretty obvious we got a premier offense. We can score on anybody. We proved that. Even up through the Vanderbilt game, we just come up a little bit short. But our defense has been exposed really since, especially the second half of the Georgia game. And if we wasn't up 30-7 at halftime, we'd probably lose that game. So let's look at it just like it is, guys. We got out-coached in this Vanderbilt game. We got to have some more consistency on defense, obviously. Defense wins championships. And
yeah, I think we're kind of beating a dead horse on this defense, and there's a lot to be improved from. I think that there's definitely room for improvement. Offense looked great. 8.6 yards a play and 46 total plays, less than 18 minutes of time of possession. We just got to get them the ball more so they have more opportunities to go out there and score some points. But I think that there's definitely even some of the fundamental things from this defensive side of your pad leverage, going up there and driving people back. It seemed like on Saturday there were a lot of plays where we were kind of catching some running backs and getting pushed back into the end zone. There's some things that you've got to go back to the basics. And so this is a moment now. We're going to find out what Kane Womack is able to do with this defense. Can you go back into practice, get those fundamentals correct? Because those can be fixed. Fundamentals can always be fixed. You can go back in this week of practice and start working on a lot of those things. And there's always a room for improvement. And then the execution is really what I'm interested in seeing. I think the player, if they're a coaching staff and you're allowing some of these fundamental mistakes to continue to happen, then that's a problem. But I think that they're going to be able to get this corrected, and they're going to have to, because we're going to face a lot of teams that are going to watch this tape and see opportunities to expose this Alabama defense. And then from a schematic standpoint, you've got to be prepared. I think we're kind of watching the fronts that we're trying to play with. It seems like we've got these 3-3, this odd man front, this even man front, and we're trying to do a little bit too much. We saw in that South Florida game and that Wisconsin game, and the Georgia game where these weaknesses are. We're kind of exposed on the edges from some outside runs. There's got to be a lot of correction from this defensive staff, but I think we can do it. I think we can absolutely make these improvements, and maybe it takes this game for them to kind of understand what this coaching staff is trying to tell them. Now, they're going to have to go do a good job of coaching them up and get them to do it the right way, because we have some offensive minds that we're going to face throughout this season that are going to sit there and watch this tape over and over again, and not just this one, because we've talked about it on this show. There's been some points throughout this season where we've seen some weaknesses, and so I think that these things, I'm going to say it again, these things can be fixed. We just need to see if these players are going to buy in and go put in the work that's necessary to improve and see what this team looks like for the back half of this season.
Very well said by Cory Reamer. I do want to remind you, I mentioned earlier, J&J Apparel. Make sure you stop by 1926 University Boulevard coming up this Thursday, October 10th, 5:30 to 6:30 to meet Alabama men's basketball forward Jaron Stevenson. You can shop with Bama's best all season long with Tide Thursday. J&J Apparel, a trusted source for Bama gear. Once again, you're listening to Crimson Tide Rewind live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Direct snap, Jalen. He will flip it to Williams coming around the edge. He will walk into the end zone. Touchdown, Alabama. They ran the little flip and a reverse to Ryan Williams. He gets into the end zone for the touchdown, and Alabama able to score to make it a 40-34 ball game here.
The prescription for success is presented by Payless Drugs. Payless Drugs, your locally owned family pharmacy with 4 locations here in Birmingham. Payless can hand your prescriptions, over-the-counter solutions, and home delivery. Payless at mynewpharmacy.com. All right, Cory, I do not want to say the word Vanderbilt the rest of the show. Let's talk about South Carolina. What's got to happen on Saturday for the Tide against a Carolina team that kind of like that school in Nashville has shown flashes of being good so far this year.
Yeah, they definitely have. We saw them really put it to Kentucky earlier this season. This is a team that you got to be prepared for. Taking LSU all the way down to the wire. This is going to be a competitive game. So you get them at home, which is great for us. Get back into Bryant-Denny Stadium, get that crowd back, come out and support this team, because there's going to be a lot of room for improvement. But I think that there's just really, from a mental standpoint, the penalties. We talked a lot about that last year, and this has got to be something that we've got to improve on this year. I believe we had 6 penalties for 57 yards, and it's not going to blow you away in terms of the number, but they all seem to come at critical points in that game. You've got to clean that up. And from a defensive standpoint, we've talked a lot about being able to stop the run. We got to create some turnovers. We didn't have any turnovers last week. We didn't cause 1 3 and out. I mean, every possession that Vanderbilt had, I think maybe less than one was. All of them were 6 plays or longer. We got to get off the field. That's going to be critical for this game coming up as well. There's a lot to improve on. There's a lot to work on that we talked about throughout this show so far. But those are 2 of the things that, obviously we always want to focus on what we can control. Penalties is being one of them. And it starts with the discipline. That's one of the things that we can fix. And this defense got to come ready to play. We've got to find ways to get this offense, because this is an explosive offense, and they can score a lot of points. We've got some of the best weapons out there. We had over 10 explosive plays on offense. Ryan Williams was involved with a lot of those. We saw a lot of good things from Jeremy Bernard. Jalen Milroe's out there competing his tail off. This running game looks good. We got to put them in opportunities to win these ball games and get the ball back for them.
Certainly do. As the Crimson Tide look forward to Saturday against the South Carolina Gamecocks. Again, kickoff is set for 11 a.m. from Saban Field. We will hit the air at 8 a.m. all across the Crimson Tide Sports Network. This show tonight presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, who reminds Bama fans, don't wait, vaccinate. We'll talk more about Alabama and South Carolina as we wrap things up in just a moment. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. What's on tap next for Bama? Brought to you by Bud Light. Bud Light, proud sponsor of Alabama Athletics. It is easy to drink. It is easy to enjoy. Well, hopefully we enjoy everything that's coming up on Saturday when Alabama returns to action against the South Carolina Gamecocks. Do want to remind you that we have Crimson Drive at 2 p.m. coming up on the Crimson Tide Sports Network social media platforms. Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR on Tuesday and Thursday at 2 o'clock. Hey Coach and the Kalen DeBoer Show coming up on Wednesday night as well at 6 p.m. from Baumhower's in Tuscaloosa. And then our radio airtime again 8 a.m. for that 11 a.m. kickoff as Alabama hosts South Carolina in a game that, again, Cory, I think will have the full attention of everybody in that Crimson Tide locker room. Yeah, you hope so. This is one of those that you hope it's not a hangover game. You hope it's one of those where they're not, they're not focused on what they're supposed to be doing. They're, the 24-hour rule applies to wins and losses the same way. You've got to be able to go back to the facility and understand why you lost that game. Watch the tape. Today on Monday is a huge day where you go out on the practice field and you walk through those mistakes that really cost you this past weekend. And so then you move on to the next opponent. You got to be able to forget about it. You understand that there's still a lot to play for this team. And you got to start focusing on a good South Carolina team that's coming in, and it's an 11 o'clock kick. This is an early one that we've got to be prepared for. Alabama's, with this new TV deal, we're not used to having so many 11 o'clock kicks throughout the season. It's been years since we've had it, but you've got to wake up on Saturday and be ready to play. And this South Carolina team is going to have, got a lot of weapons. They've got some names that we've heard, in the past that have been at different schools, which is always the case now with this transfer portal. Robbie Ashford's been a guy that's been filling in. I think Sellers played most of the game last week against Ole Miss at quarterback, but you've got Rocket Sanders as well at running back. That's really good. Alabama fans remember Rocket Sanders really well. He's a guy that's had some success against these Alabama defenses. It's a talented team. They've done a great job of going out there and finding guys that are in these transfer portals to fill some of the holes that they've lost. So the main thing is, watch the tape, learn from it. You got to grow. This is the pain point, but we saw what happened last year. You lose a game early. How does this team respond? What does this leadership on this team look like where you can rally the troops and realize that there is still plenty of season left to play for and a lot of opportunity, especially with this 12-team playoff at the end. You just got to find a way to get in. You don't have room to drop any more from here on out, so you better be focused each and every single week. That goes for the fans, too. We kept urging the fans to give Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium a great atmosphere for the Georgia game. Got to have it once again. And the fans did deliver for that Georgia game, but again, need to see it against South Carolina. Of course they did for the Georgia game, and that was a night game. Now you've got an 11 o'clock kick. These fans have got to show up and make it difficult, because the last thing you want is to have an opposing team come into Bryant-Denny and there's not much of an environment, or you're not making it difficult on these offenses to be, communicating when they're on the field. And I got a feeling that these fans are going to show up because, like I just said, there's still plenty to play for. This season is not done and far from it. So, this is going to be a good one on Saturday. We're going to learn a lot about this team this coming weekend to figure out what kind of maturity level and leadership that we have from the coaching staff and from the players, see how we bounce back. We know the fans will be there on Saturday at Saban Field. We know they were here tonight with us at Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. We thank everybody that has been here for this past hour as we talked about Alabama Vandy. Now look forward to Alabama South Carolina. Cory Reamer, thank you for your time. Roll Tide. Hey, roll Tide, Roger. That's Cory Reamer. I'm Roger Hoover. If you missed any portion of tonight's show, catch it on demand on the Alabama Insider Podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Again, that does it tonight for us with Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health, live from Baumhower's Victory Grille in Vestavia Hills. Huge thank you back to our studios to Jerry Kelly and Cooper Rollins for running the show. Here running the show at Baumhower is our producer and engineer, Todd Robbins, as well as Cory Reamer. I'm Roger Hoover saying thank you for listening to Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health. We'll see you Saturday for Alabama against South Carolina. Until then, roll Tide.
You've been listening to Crimson Tide Rewind.